The debate on reinstating compulsory military service in Poland has reignited. The head of the Polish National Security Bureau, Sławomir Cęckiewicz, has stated that the current situation is a good moment to bring it back. What does the government say about this? What does it mean in practice? And how are Poles reacting to this news? Compulsory military service aims to prepare citizens to defend the country in the event of war. The scope and rules of conscription will be specified in a relevant law. Regardless of the duration of service, the principles would remain unchanged. Eligible citizens would undergo military training. We must reinstate compulsory military service. We must devote more time to training the public. NATO is looking for tools that will prove to be a response to growing pressure from Russia. Among the threats, experts mention military pressure on NATO's eastern flank, including military maneuvers and the transfer of illegal migrants, cyber attacks and destabilization campaigns, sabotage, disinformation. The head of the President's office spoke about this in an interview with Super Express. Various options need to be considered, but no decision has been made in this regard. We must start talking about threats directly, including by preparing society for these threats. The last conscription into the army took place in 2008. Formally, compulsory military service was suspended in 2010 by the Minister of Defense at the time, Bogdan Klich. He was repeatedly criticized for this decision, especially in the context of other demilitarization measures taken by Donald Tusk's previous government. More than 15 years after the ill-advised suspension of conscription, the Polish President's National Security Advisor is publicly calling for the return of compulsory service. I am pleased about this, not only as a politician who has long promoted the idea of universal national service and greater citizen involvement in Poland's security. For now, the government is not showing such a willingness. The President, on the other hand, is not saying no. Based on analyses and statistics, we do not have a big problem with people willing to join the Polish army today. There are many willing Polish patriots who want to undertake military training in the format of voluntary basic service. I encourage all Poles to join the voluntary basic service. I know that there are different models among our neighbours. The Minister of National Defence, Władysław Kosiniak-Kamysz, has a different opinion. He believes that concern for the security of the homeland should rest solely on the shoulders of the professional army. Now we need to strengthen the reserves and train them well. I'm in favour of universal training and strengthening the training of reservists. The head of the Ministry of National Defence previously indicated that the professional army is supplemented by a system of voluntary military service. There is no denying that the issue of compulsory military service is uncomfortable for politicians. Raising this issue by a particular political party could result in a loss of support among men. That is why politicians in the ruling coalition are calculating whether security or party interests are more important. Naturally, the topic is difficult for various reasons, but it does not have to be exactly the same model of compulsory military service that existed before 2010. Of course, one may think of various types of compulsory training. We asked Poles whether a social compromise is possible and whether, in their opinion, compulsory military service should be reinstated. I think so. If there was a war, would you defend your homeland? Yes. Yes. In Europe, 9 countries are seeking to strengthen their armies through compulsory military service. Denmark, Estonia, Finland, Greece, Latvia, Lithuania, Norway, Sweden and Turkey. Croatia, on the other hand, plans to reinstate it next year. It turns out that after the outbreak of the war in Ukraine, despite technological advances that are important, a large army cannot be replaced. Poland compares very favourably with other European countries in terms of the size of its army. The number of people willing to serve in our army is growing. The Polish army has over 175,000 soldiers, making it the 3rd largest armed force in NATO and the largest in Europe. However, methods that work in peacetime need to be reviewed in the face of growing geopolitical tensions. Wherever you look, everyone has a phone in their hand. They click, like, post and check what's going on social media. Adults set an example for children who are starting their lives in virtual reality at an increasingly early age. Australia has just become the first country in the world to deny children under the age of 16 access to social media. What do young people, who spend most of their time online, think about this? I think it's a good move, although a little too late, because I think it should have been introduced before social media became popular. It has a negative impact on many people in that they perceive themselves completely differently, comparing themselves to others instead of living their own lives. They live the lives of other people, which is definitely not healthy. It used not to be like this. Yes, Children used to live normal lives. Now everyone is glued to their phones as if they can't see life outside of these devices. Young internet users themselves see the dangers of social media, which the Minister of Digital Affairs in the December 13th coalition government clearly does not see. I don't think it's a good idea to raise the age for using social media to 16, since Polish internet users can sign up from the age of 13, and most often parents allow them to do so when they are 10 or 11 years old. So, according to the 13th December coalition, it is not a problem that children are exposed to attacks in Chinese apps which try to control users' thinking from an early age by showing them dangerous and unverified content. This is a huge business and Chinese companies do not follow the rules. Most young people do not differentiate between what is true and what is fiction, and they take all content as objective truth. The Australian authorities do not agree that technology companies should shape children's attitudes outside the control of parents or schools.
It's fantastic, but I wish the government good luck in trying to get the companies to make sure that the students and the teenagers that are going to be involved in and impacted in this are going to be able to follow it through.
Parents who work in the technology industry feel the same way. As a father of two young children and a conscious internet user, I can say that I consider the support of the state and governments in limiting the use of messaging apps and social media by minors to be a good step. Especially since dangers lurk on the internet, and those most vulnerable are the youngest users. What are the dangers on the internet today when it comes to children and young people? Enormous. Take artificial intelligence, for example, which is currently becoming widespread, where it is difficult to distinguish truth from lies. I think the biggest threat is hate. Let's say someone posts something. People call them names. It's unpleasant. Looking at what my friends' children watch on TikTok, where the idol is often some artist who has no moral values, I think that this law should be regulated in some way. Conversation, a walk, a book, time spent together are good alternatives to a phone or computer screen.
Dzieci nie mają jakichś wzorców, tak, które są, że tak powiem, nie wiem, z życia.
Children don't have any role models who are, so to speak, taken from real life, but they draw from what is in social media. And as we know, social media, let's not kid ourselves, is highly manipulative. And secondly, it presents an ideal world that doesn't really exist, right? Life is not made up solely of perfect people, beautiful women and wonderful people with wonderful lives. Life has ups and downs. And if a child learns to deal with them in the real world, they will also be able to cope in the virtual world.
This could be a critical point of escalation off the coast of Venezuela. U.S. forces have boarded and seized a tanker that was supposed to transport Venezuelan oil to Asia using Cuban intermediaries. The operation was approved at the highest levels of the U.S. government and is intended to send a clear signal to Caracas. The days of the Maduro regime are numbered.
As you probably know, we've just seized a tanker on the coast of Venezuela, large tanker, very large. Largest one ever seized, actually. And other things are happening, so you'll be seeing that later, and you'll be talking about that later with some other people.
The message from the Americans certainly reached not only the dictator himself, but also his closest associates.
We're interested in the seizure of this tanker. What happens to the oil on this ship?
Well, we keep it, I guess.
However, this is not the only blow Maduro has received today. Another one came from the other side of the world. The leader of the Venezuelan opposition, this year's Nobel Prize winner, who has been banned by the regime from leaving Venezuela, appeared in Oslo. Maria Corina Machado had been hiding in Caracas for several weeks. From there, under cover of night and in disguise, she reached the coast, where in agreement with the U.S. military, she left Venezuela by boat.
I am very hopeful Venezuela will be free, and we will turn a country into a beacon of hope and opportunity of democracy. And we will welcome not only the Venezuelans that have been forced to flee, but citizens from all over the world that will find a refuge, as Venezuela used to be decades ago.
Dangerous.
Her presence in Norway is linked to a significant increase in U.S. military activity in the Caribbean region. Machado openly supports the actions of the United States, considering Donald Trump's presidency to be the only chance for democratic change in Venezuela. These may come sooner than observers think. There is growing consternation within the regime's ranks. On the one hand, there are ministers who threaten Americans on their television talk shows. The Bolivarian Republic of Venezuela strongly condemns and rejects what constitutes blatant theft and an act of international piracy, publicly announced by the President of the United States, who admitted to attacking an oil tanker in the Caribbean. On the other hand, however, there is Nicolas Maduro himself, who is conducting a television campaign of love and peace, which even his most diehard supporters are finding increasingly difficult to explain rationally. To American citizens who oppose war, I respond with a very well-known song, Don't Worry, Be Happy.
Don't worry, be happy. La 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 la. Don't worry, be happy. La 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 la. Just peace, not war.
According to unconfirmed reports, during a conversation between President Trump and Maduro a few days ago, the dictator declared his willingness to leave the country in exchange for a guarantee of amnesty and the lifting of sanctions on his associates and family. The White House reportedly refused, and Trump suggested that he flee as soon as possible.